Dying in video games tend to take many different appearances, from immediately spawning you back at a starting point only a few yards away, to ending the entire game and telling you that you suck, you're not a real gamer, what are you doing here, go play My Little Pony Island Adventure, you scrub. Whichever tactic the game takes, with you failing your tasks and sending you to the big pixelated clouds in the sky, there's usually some methodology behind the mechanic. And now, in patch 4.3.1, released in September of 2025, Star Citizen is starting to finally introduce a small piece of what injuries and death in the universe will eventually be like, something that has been a longly awaited system for players of all types, most of all people who want to be the EMS response team in our virtual universe. With this patch, we are seeing a few major changes, first of which is the introduction of the medical resource called MedGel. This is the substance that will allow us to respawn in the universe and give us more than one chance at quelling that pesky group of pirates from attacking that poor defenseless outpost. It's not exactly cheap, and only required should we decide to invoke the luxury of respawning somewhere away from a designated hospital or clinic, such as a medical ship or any ship with a functioning and properly stocked medical bed, allowing us to choose if the additional cost is worth getting right back to the location we were at the time of our unfortunate fate. Speaking of medbeds, they have been further altered to allow respawning at different distances depending on the tier of medbed that's being used, and each tier allowing for different amounts of the aforementioned medgel to be stored inside of it. Roughly speaking, as of now, a tier 3 medical bed can spawn you as long as you died in the relative area of the location and, when fully stocked, has enough medgel in it to respawn you twice. A tier 2 medical bed will more or less cover the area of a planet and then some, and have enough gel to respawn you 4 times. And a tier 1 medical bed will be able to recover you from the jaws of death across most systems and allow for up to 6 respawns without needing to refill it. And what would all these new additions be without a fancy new ship around to separate us from our hard-earned money? Well, worry not. Along with all the initial changes to medical gameplay comes the long-awaited debut of the RSI Apollo.
It's only been like 7 years.
So what is CIG intending with these changes, and what are these differences going to affect for now? Well, the main issue this change will be tackling is the relative ease of getting into never-ending altercations with other players. Let's face it, some of the most popular ships for a lot of content are the medical ships. Up till now, they were easy to obtain and allowed you to have a mobile respawn point anywhere you needed it. And with the Tier 0 implementation of item recovery, where you respawn with all of your gear, dying is basically nothing but a bruised ego. This would tend to become the most egregious at PvP locations. Anyone doing an executive hangar knows that most likely the person you just kill is just going to be right back in less than 2 minutes, fully geared and ready to take you on again. Then if they kill you, you're just going to be right back to continue the fighting. Or what about the Hathor mine? It's a regular move to bring a medical Pisces into the mine, park it in the back, so if anyone contests you, you just keep respawning, leading to a back and forth constantly until the mine just closes. This isn't how the game was intended to be played. Now, there is a limit. Sure, a medical ship presents a problem, but with the rather high cost of the respawning resource, it will greatly reduce the likelihood that you or your opponent will be able to afford to constantly and endlessly respawn that would turn your node of content you're interacting with into a miniature Call of Duty match. Also on the topic of cost, it finally adds something the game desperately needs more of: money sinks. There needs to be more things of the game that take money away from players. It's far too easy to attain wealth, and even though that's not too important in our alpha, money sinks need to be tested and ready to go come 1.0. And we can't forget the large amount of players who have been dying to be the space medics of the game. There's a big portion of the Star Citizen community whose sole interest in this game, or at least a large interest, is purely going around and being an EMS pilot. They have been neglected for years. It's about time they get a bit more to sink their teeth into. Now, like any change in the alpha, there are detractors, both valid critiques and those I personally think are misguided. Unfortunately for some, I think there's a rude awakening that many new additions to the universe haven't realized. This has been part of the plan, and that plan was funded for hundreds of millions of dollars, not the current state of ease in the game. Dying is supposed to be a setback, and to soften that setback, you can prepare and use money in the game for second or third chances, or to walk away. This game was always intended to have severe consequences from poor planning or poor choices, or just being outmatched. It's always great to see the community grow. However, due to the extended development and sometimes unclear marketing as the Star Citizen being an alpha or a live service game, it can lead people to believe that this far more lax version of our tech demo is the intended gameplay type. I'm sorry if this is your first time hearing this, but it isn't. Dying in Star Citizen is supposed to be a punishment. That is why there are choices around it. If you are incapacitated, you'll be able to get players like those in the Medrunners organization to come and heal you and rescue you from needing to respawn. That is supposed to be the preferred outcome rather than just dying, like most players choose now. So much so that Death of a Spaceman is coming, meaning eventually you won't be able to respawn even at a hospital. You're losing your character and you're making a new one. To be clear though, it is not the intention that upon permanent death you lose everything. In-game, there will be a next of kin system where your new character inherits the bulk of your former character's money and of course your pledged ships, with a tax, because of course the government always gets theirs. Death will behave as a large penalty for repeated poor choices or constant reckless behavior, and as more of the details haven't been fully fleshed out, I would personally probably say look at it as a 20 to 30% penalty to money, ships, and reputation. Possibly more to reputation. However, I will say there is more than a fair share of viable critiques to our new medical system. One of which is being that due to the fact that the game still has more than its fair share of bugs, players can, and regularly do, find themselves dying to no fault of their own. It can be very frustrating to add a layer of penalty to an issue that wasn't even in the player's control. With that critique though comes the fact that respawning in hospitals and clinics are still 100% free. And before the Pisces Rescue came into the game, adding the ability to respawn in our medbeds, we all went to the hospitals and clinics every time we died anyways, and we managed just fine. Just now, we can choose if we want the added perk of our own spawn point, even though I know having something easy and useful taken away doesn't always feel good. I would also like to add that I agree with the sentiment of some players saying that there should be a second resource to manage injuries. As of now, healing tiered injuries and respawning all use the same med gel. Thankfully, during PTUs, CIG drastically lowered the cost of using med gel for injuries, but it brings up concerns. The med gel is an expensive resource, costing us 100,000 AUEC per canister. Even lowering the resource cost means healing someone with just a tier 3 injury will cost the owner of the canister 2,500 credits worth of med gel. The problem I see with this is with all the players wanting to participate in medical rescue. To activate a beacon and get rescued costs 15,000 AUEC, and that money is awarded to the rescuer. But if their patient wants to use any medical facilities, now the cost goes up for the victim, or the rescuer has to take a cut into their profit. If you raise the price of medical beacons, you might start to price out new players out of that option, and if you don't, it won't be financially viable for a rescue player, especially if they deflate the currency as they should before launch. Now, you could just fix this by saying the government consolidates the cost and awards more than the 15,000 beacon costs to the rescuer. That might be an easy fix. However, then the other issue with potentially losing track of how much medgel you have left comes up. It's a smaller issue, yes, and one that's ultimately the player's own fault, but I can already tell you that tons of people are going to miss their opportunity to respawn in their medical bed because they kept healing injuries and lost track of the resource remaining inside the bed. It'll even feel worse if they have a bunch more canisters just sitting in storage on the ship. And I know, everyone is actually excited about that damn Apollo. And I can't really blame you, it's a gorgeous ship, and one that has been in concept since 2018, and now, 7 years later, we finally have our hands on it. The ship has increased in size, making it a fair bit larger than its original concept, but at this point, who's surprised? All of the ships concepted seem to grow a bit before release. The big letdown obviously being that the functionality of using drones to rescue people has been more or less scrapped. CIG stated they left room for the drones in the future should they add that capability, but they don't see the feasibility of using drones to rescue anymore, due to how the game has changed since the original concept. And as much as it is a letdown, I do kind of see their point. It would be such a niche use case and a lot more trouble than it's worth. I still think it would be cool, and if CIG could figure out a way to incorporate them for a larger use case, I'm 100% down for the inclusion of drones on medical ships. But for now, It would seem more like a feature included just for show 99% of the time. The two variants of the Apollo, the Medevac and Triage, are more or less identical and both gorgeous, incorporating all the lessons CIG has learned about shipbuilding in all these years and benefiting from all the assets that have been made from developing ships like the Polaris and Meteor. They're so similar, in fact, it almost begs the question, why are there two variants? They both have full modular capabilities, allowing for 6 different modules to be used, identical layout and capabilities. The only difference comes that the Medevac version carries more missiles and has more armor, translating currently that the Medevac has more hit points and the Triage is a little bit faster. Now, when the Maelstrom system gets implemented and armor will be a very real variable in game, I could possibly see the Medevac taking the edge over the Triage in a combat environment. But even then, the advantages seem very slim. I would have also liked to see some additional medical peripherals to go with the ships. The areas that would have incorporated the drones have led to an increase in cargo capacity for the ship. That could have been utilized with things such as gurneys or other medical tools that could aid us in our endeavor to leave no man behind, leading the ship to feel less of a mobile respawn point and more of a mobile clinic. These are just a few nitpicks that me and a few of my fellow citizens have brought up. Overall, I'm glad to see these additions to the game. It will serve several purposes, getting the community ready for what life will be like in the verse come 1.0. The current version is still only a small piece of the overall puzzle, with people pointing out potential exploits that could be utilized from claiming the ship. To that, I do have to point out, the more pieces of the puzzle remain. Frivolously destroying your ship and claiming it won't be a viable option in the future. Claim times are low and free now due to testing reasons. It's not going to be like that forever. But for now, it's a step in the right direction. And with testing, we will certainly see even more balancing done to this system. And hey, if medical gameplay is something you're interested in trying in the verse, and you want to sign up for the project, go ahead and use my referral code on screen and in the link below to get you 50,000 credits at the start of your journey. That's like 3.3333 medical beacons worth. That's a steal. If you liked this content and feel like I deserve it, giving me a sub and a like is 100% free and goes a long way to helping my content get out there. Thank you so much. Once again, I've been the guy with the generic gamer tag, and I'll see you in the next one.